My glider has 4 configurations of wingtips, winglets, and wing extensions. Can you beat that? Well, I mean, my plane has 4 engines. Does that count? Reading aviation threads. Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. I recently had some people send me pictures of Reddit threads to my Instagram account. And I've seen other YouTubers do Reddit thread videos, and I thought, well, sure, they do it, I can do it. Now, I'll be honest, I don't get on Reddit to answer a lot of questions. If I go on to answer questions, I usually go on to the 7-4 Gear forum and answer people's questions there. So I don't get on Reddit a lot, but when I started looking for things for this video, I did end up answering some of these questions. But let's get into it. What's your favorite airplane to fly and why? I think you kind of know. I fly a 747. I really enjoy flying that plane. It's a really easy plane to fly, which is surprising because of the size. You would think it'd be more difficult, but it's a really easy plane to fly, and it's fun sometimes. Also, the Dreamlifter. You pull up somewhere that you don't go all the time, and you have 20 or 30 people out there taking photos of you. I don't know. It's just cool to see how people would love to be doing my job, and it reminds me that, hey, this is really such a cool job. Even in the tough times or times where I'm really irritated about doing something, it reminds me, hey, this is a really awesome job. Opinions on Captain Joe. So I've met some YouTubers. Obviously, there's some that I haven't met. You see me post pictures of some people on Instagram. Joe is really genuinely a very, very nice guy. You know, sometimes you hear about people where they have a stage presence and they're super friendly, and then in real life they're a dick. When I met Joe, we were both on a layover in Anchorage, and we ended up, I saw him, he was there, we saw each other, we had a juice, and we hung out. This is a photo of us. No, he's genuinely really a very nice guy. We hung out and had a juice and talked for, I don't know, an hour and a half or something like that, and then I took off. Your decision on an engine fire failure at a low altitude when landing. So this is actually something that I thought about a lot when I was a new pilot, and here's the reality. There's no one set situation that it's always going to be one thing. But if you're coming in to land and you have a fire or some type of a failure, there's no reason, if you can safely make a landing there, this is my opinion, and follow your company procedures or your checklist or things like that. But in a lot of cases, if you have an engine fire or something that you think is going to be very dangerous to the safety of flight, you're better just to get on the ground quicker. Get on the ground, stop, obviously declare an emergency, get the fire trucks out there, and all that type of stuff. Now, if there's something where that is going to cause the plane to not safely be able to land, well then you've got to make the decision there. So there's no one set thing, but if you're on short final and your engine blows up and the plane is on fire or something like that, absolutely, you need to land the plane. Don't go run checklists and do things like that. Get on the ground safely, because again, I always talked about safety is the most important thing, and so if you think that is the safest choice, then get on the ground. At the end of the day, that's kind of the easy decision to make, is what's the safer option? If it's safer to get on the ground, then get on the ground. What are some of your aviation goals? Mine is to get my ATP and a 747 type rating at the same time. I don't care if I have to pay for it. I will do it. How else do you think you're going to get it if you don't pay for it? So look, flying the 747 is awesome. I agree. Having that type rating is great if you fly the plane. Having the type rating and not flying the plane, it just kind of looks silly if you ask me. It's great to have goals, but the reality is there's a reason that there's a flow to doing things. If you try to make your ATP check ride, which is what your final check ride is really for your flight training, your airline transport pilot rating, if you make that a 747 type rating, it may make your life a little bit more difficult. Depending on where you're at, and I don't know where you're at, but if you're in the US, you might end up doing your regional airline will have it all set up for you to be able to get that check ride, get your ATP done, complete your check ride. You'll get a bunch of sims, usually 8 to 10 sims in order to do that. If you do what you're talking about here, you may end up having a lot of extra training that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to pay a lot of money to do this because you're saying you'll even pay for it. Well, no airline is going to hire you with not even having an ATP to fly a 747. I don't know of any airline that would do that. I'm not saying it's not possible, but not likely. So I would just go through the flow, and I mean, having the goal to fly a 747, that should be your goal. Having the type rating and never flying the plane, that's no one's going to be really impressed. Like, oh, I got a type rating. Congratulations. How much time have you flown in the plane? Well, 0. No one's going to be impressed by that. Turbofans versus turboprops. What's the difference? It's kind of a longer thing to explain. I actually made a video about it. I'll put a link to it up here, but I don't know. Watch that video. That's the easiest way to understand it. Pilots, on a scale of 1 to 10, how nerve-wracking would flying through this turbulence be? Have you ever experienced worse? And then it's a TikTok video. So here's the thing. When you're a pilot and you're flying through rough air, you know, usually you'll hear the engines pull back. I made a video about that as well, talking about if you're nervous while you're flying. I've never been flying and been scared about turbulence because I know what's going on. As a passenger, I understand you're not in control, so it makes more sense to be scared. It's kind of like driving. Usually you're not scared if you're in control, but you might be watching the other person driving like a maniac and you think like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? I'm pretty sure this is how I die. I'm pretty sure this is how I die. It's the same thing with flying. The aviation community is so toxic. Rant. You know, there's some truth to that. Pilots are whiners. I've talked about that in a lot of my videos. When I got into aviation, I talked to my uncle about it, and I said, man, these pilots are always complaining about this, that, or the other thing. And he said, you know, these guys grew up when it was the 60s and 70s, when being a pilot was just, oh my gosh, you were a sky god. And so it's a little bit different now, and they're having a hard time with it. So I don't know what to tell you. It's true. There are a lot of people. There's people, I mean, look at some of the Facebook groups and stuff where they post videos of me and they talk about all the bad things that they think about me, and it is what it is. You're always going to have people that are going to be toxic no matter what profession you're in, but yeah, there are a lot of toxic people in aviation. Are you even an AvGeek if you don't have at least one fascination about your pilot becoming unable to perform their duties and you having to save the day? You know, I've thought about this. One time I was flying on a 747 on British Airways. I was going from London, I think, to Seattle to go pick up the Dreamlifter. And it was kind of cool to go up and talk to the guys for a little bit and know, hey, if something really went bad, like, I could do all the things that you guys would need me to do to fly this plane. I want to fly the plane! I think everybody has thought about that possible scenario. It's obviously, hopefully never happens, because you don't ever want to be in that situation, AvGeek, professional pilot, whatever, where that other person's injured, because it's going to add a lot of stress to your decision making on what's going to go on. Getting rid of pilots. Aviators of Reddit, in your opinion, how long before we see single-seat heavy aircraft flying in the US? How about unmanned heavy aircraft? That's a really good question, actually. I don't think it's going to be anytime in the very near future, and here's why. The technology for the security and the encoding for what type of data transfer would be necessary for that to happen is not likely. I think if it does happen, or when it does happen, because it definitely will happen in the future, it will probably start with cargo, and it'll probably start with something like LA to Hong Kong, something that's over the water, where if there is a crash or the plane does lose some type of connection and crashes into the water, that it won't really matter. I mean, you'll lose your Amazon package, but it won't be a huge deal. I don't think it's going to be any time in the near future, though, because to have it flying over land, or to get people comfortable with getting into a tube with 300 other people and there's nobody up there, or, you know, I'm sitting in my PJs in some, you know, living room somewhere hanging out in a lazy boy flying the plane while I, you know, watch TV or play video games or make YouTube videos, that no one's going to feel really comfortable with that. So I think it's going to be a while before it really it takes over, but it will definitely happen, and I think it will be cargo first. Shout out to all the fire crews. You have our back when things go wrong. Love you all unconditionally and want to thank them personally. These guys are EGPK Gulf Apron after we experienced major engine malfunctions on climb out, then full failure on landing just over a week ago. 100%. I'll tell you, like, I've seen, you know, fire guys, when I've had to declare an emergency before, they're there. It's one of those jobs that is kind of very cool in a way, but imagine you're at an airport and you're a firefighter. There's really not a lot that's going on. And then when there is something going on, it's super, super tragic. You know, if you have a plane that crashes on the runway and there's a fire, like, that's a super tragic situation. And, you know, it's not like a normal firefighter who's maybe in New York, who's fighting fires all the time where they get a lot of experience. There's not a lot of plane crashes. So you could be a firefighter at an airport and have no plane crashes in 15 or 20 years. And then you could have one on your last day, and you're the senior guy there and you've never really fought a plane fire before. So, you know, big shout out to those guys. They do a lot of training and they're there. And, you know, if you really are in a jam, that's the thing that I think make firefighters such huge heroes, is that your plane's on fire and they're rushing into you. When you're a pilot and you're having to land a plane that's on fire and they're like, you're a hero, you're like, well, kind of, but you're also trying to save yourself. These guys are leaving the comfort of wherever their firehouse and racing into the burning plane to get you out. So to me, that's really where you're putting your own life at risk like that. That really makes you a hero. So yeah, I agree. Shout out to all you firefighters out there. I really appreciate everything you do and all the first responders. I think it's super awesome. My glider has 4 configurations of wingtips, winglets, and wing extensions. Can you beat that? Well, I mean, my plane has 4 engines. Does that count? Bangkok Airport. Is it haunted? Was browsing the internet and came across the fact that Bangkok International Airport could be haunted. In fact, the government asked 800 priests to come to the airport and assist in getting rid of ghosts upon opening the airport. This is quite an interesting topic. Okay, I guess we'll go a little fast and loose with the word interesting. I've flown into Bangkok as a pilot. I've flown in there as a passenger. I've never experienced any ghosts. Is it haunted? I don't know. But if you're a pilot, it really shouldn't matter. I've never seen ghosts anywhere on final or on the ground. Ever thought about how weird of a hobby plane spotting is? On a first date, her. So what do you like to do for fun? Me. I watch airplanes take off and land and move around. Well, he's got the right? So, you know, he's got the pilot The reality is yeah, that is a little bit strange if you think about it. A lot of times when we're taxiing out, I've seen guys that are lining the fence there that are taking pictures, and I've seen people take pictures of me when I'm landing or taking off, and I think it's pretty cool. I think, if you really love aviation and for whatever reason you don't become a pilot, I don't think there's anything wrong with it because you're blending 2 things that you love. You could love photography and you can love aviation. You guys have seen my pictures. I'm definitely not a photographer. So if you love those 2 things, it's kind of a cool blend if you're honest. The fact that they sit out there in some terrible weather for hours taking photos, I'm not that tough. I don't know. I grew up in Southern California, so if it's not like 75 and sunny, I really don't want to be outside. So, is it a weird profession? I don't know. If you love photography and you love aviation, makes sense to me. Why do so many turboprops look the same? That's kind of a weird question. I don't know. There's only so many ways that you can do that. But I mean, you got single-engine turboprops and 2-engine turboprops, 4-engine turboprops. So there's a bunch of different variations to how you can make that. But there's only so much of a variation you can make on the engine. You could say the same thing with a Boeing or an Airbus. There's a lot of people that would look at a 737 and an A320 and think, oh, those look the same. I mean, winglets are a little bit different and engines might be a little bit different, things like that. But, they're similar because they're the most efficient design and they're going to kind of copy each other. I don't know. Perceptions of Boeing and Airbus. I'm a newbie in aviation, blah, 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 blah. So do people generally prefer one over the other and why? Do pilots generally have a preference? One is better to fly? Does everyone hate Boeing? I hope this question makes sense. I think it's just a personal preference. I remember when I was in flight school, I talked to a guy who flew for United and he flew the Airbus. And I asked him, I said, do you think the Airbus is better than Boeing? What's your thought on it? And he said, no, I think they're both good in different ways. So it really becomes down to preference. So obviously I fly the Boeing. I'm used to the yoke. If you put me in an Airbus, probably would be pretty ugly, and vice versa. So you're going to have people that have their own styles, and the computers are different. The way you fly it is different. There's a lot of differences in how those planes are flown. So you get used to one, and I think you just kind of stick with that. I don't think that there is one that's like, hey, this is a better product than that product, like safety-wise. I think they're just 2 different types of products. I don't think that there's one that's better. You might have one that's more fuel efficient than the other, but it's kind of like the technology is always changing. But if you're asking for like safety, which should be a pilot's main priority, I don't think that you're going to ever hear a pilot say, no, Airbus isn't safe, or no, Boeing isn't safe. I don't think that that's true. Pilots have some balls. What do pilots think themselves after landing aircraft such as the 737, 747, etc.? Do they just go about their day like they didn't just land a damn fine piece of engineering? I'm genuinely curious as I'm addicted to flights FS 2020, but I've never gotten a chance to fly in real life, although I really want to. When I go land a plane, I don't walk off like, what's up? Sometimes we'll talk trash to each other in the plane, but as soon as we get off the plane, that's basically it. You feel cool, I think, at the very beginning, the first couple times, because you're like, dude, I just landed a 747. That's pretty cool, but like anything, it wears off. If you've enjoyed me reading some of these comments but want to see some mean comments about me, check out this video up here. If you want to see me explaining some aviation videos, check out this video up here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.